Today, I'd like to welcome to the program Matt Betts, a former radio on-air personality and newscaster, writer, poet, and huge pop culture junkie. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, as I mentioned briefly off-air, I see you've had a very diverse career.
I think that's a polite way of putting it. Yeah, I've kind of been all over the place, I guess. I mean, I when I went to college, I thought, this has been a while ago. This has been 20-ish years ago, some years ago, and I thought it'd be fun to be on the radio. I thought that'd be a blast, and so I went into college my first week, and I said, "Oh, they've got a radio station here." So me and like two other friends, we went there and said, "Hey, can we get some kind of training? We'd love to be on the air sometime." They go, "Yeah, you'll start Monday." And, this was like a Thursday or something,
Oh, wow.
And so they really didn't give us any training there. They just kind of threw us in there. So, I did news for college station for a while. I also ended up, doing, being a DJ for a metal show for a little while. And so I really, you kind of got thrown into it, and you learned a lot of things. You learned about production, and you learned, how to handle yourself in an interview. You how to interview others, and so it was all a pretty quick learning process. And so I was at school anyway for broadcasting, and I ended up doing a lot of radio and doing a little bit of news here and there. It was whatever sort of was available. But it was kind of weird because I was there, and it was the big sort of alternative time. It was when Seattle bands were big and grunge was just hitting, and I ended up working for oldies stations. So while I was driving to work, listening to Nirvana, and I'd get there and I'd be playing Elvis and Roy Orbison, and so which was fine by me, but it was just a really weird time for me to be absorbing all this culture. And I think that's where I kind of, part of the reason I, consider myself a pop culture junkie is that I had this infusion of just sort of a little bit of everything. And I ended up working for another oldie station later on when I came back to my hometown in Lima. And I kind of had a varied track with that. I've done a lot with publishing. I've done a lot of writing. I publish poetry as well, speculative poetry. So I have horror poetry out there. I interned at a TV station for a while, and I worked at a comedy club as a waiter, which was probably one of my favorite jobs ever. Not the waiter part of it, but to go into these comedy clubs at the time and just have people come in and do their acts for a week, and you could watch these comedians like develop a joke. You either had the people that came in that were trying new stuff, or the people who had their act and did it and got out. But over a week, you could see the good ones are the ones who really paid attention to the audience. Take that kernel of a joke and mess with it and see how people reacted and things like that. So
that had to been fun.
It was, yeah. I mean, I met a lot of really good comedians at the time, and it was a pretty big deal for comedy at the time too. So, it was in the early '90s, and like every cable show had their own comedy special or comedy night or whatever, and so you got to see a lot of people coming in and doing stuff. And it's kind of like when you're writing a book or when you're writing poetry or whatever, taking that idea and trying different things with it. And I think I learned a lot from them, just by seeing how, some of these really good comedians took an idea and ran with it,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just to be kind of a fly on the wall, just to kind of see how their process works, had to be part of the fun of developing your own stuff.
Yeah, it was. And I think, radio is a really great job, especially when I was a DJ, doing the nights or whatever, because you really were on your own. You got to, really work on something, or you got to just go live and say whatever, and you had to have it, it had to have some sort of rhythm to it. It had to have, you couldn't be stuttering like I am now. You had to be smooth and get in and get out. And a lot of the comedians were like that. You could tell by their demeanor whether they were, comfortable being on stage or whether they were new or whether they were trying something new and weren't quite comfortable with the joke. So yeah, it was an interesting way to learn things. And I did that for 2 years. And like I said, a lot of great people came in and out of there that I got to watch them, with their acts. So yeah, terrific job.
What were some of the biggest people you get to see come out of there?
Well, see, when I say my favorite big person, people go, "Oh, I don't know who he is." It's kind of hard to say this, but I don't know if you know Larry Miller. He's an actor. He's been in tons of stuff. He was in Pretty Woman. He was in, Still All the Way Back There. He was in 10 Things I Hate About You and stuff like that. And he also was a comedian. And he long before he was doing the acting. It was one of the last times I was at the club. I was moving on. I got another job. And they let me come back and interview him for a class I was doing. And he just had all kinds of great advice. And he was just a terrific guy to sit down with. And, gave me, just as I was interviewing him, gave me advice, great advice about myself as I was going through. I was this college student with somebody I really looked up to. And I said, I'm really sorry that I'm not really prepared. And he kind of said, you know what, you never have to tell someone you're sorry about, showing up and being you, I guess, He kind of put me at ease talking to somebody I was kind of flabbergasted around. He kind of, I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he said, you do the best you can be, more or less. And just a lot of other things he said stuck with me. He was, like I said, he was in movies, he was a comedian, and he went to school. I didn't know that until I interviewed him to be a musician. So he was like a concert pianist or something. And I said, wow, that's a lot of creative stuff going on. And he said, well, one thing kind of feeds into the other. If I write a piano piece or I practice this piano piece, it helps me be creative when it's time to write, or when it comes time to be on stage or in front of a camera. Just one thing leads to another, and they all sort of help each other and feed each other and make each other better. So it was kind of neat that I felt pulled, obviously describing my careers, I guess. I've always felt kind of pulled in different directions because I would love to do, I'd love to write short stories. I'd love to write poetry. I'd love to write this and that. And he just sort of said, it's okay to do it all, as long as you do the best you can at all of them. And eventually they're all going to, feel like one big creative whole. Like